Hello, and welcome to another episode of Shirenomics. My name is Jonathan Cooper with the Bennington County Regional Commission, and usually with me is Matt Harrington of the Southwestern Vermont Chamber of Commerce. He had a bit of a scheduling conflict, won't be able to join us today. And in fact, this show is a little different from all the others that you've seen, because usually we're coming to you from GNAT-TV studios in Sunderland, and usually we have just one guest, but today we have two. In a minute, we'll get to hear more from Wendy Morse and Peter Odierna, who will be discussing issues with the COVID-19 response as it relates to the Department of Labor and K&E Plastics, a small business in Bennington. But first, we'll start with what we usually start with, which is a segment we call Top of Mind. In this instance, what would be top of mind for Matt and me, if we were both here, is COVID-19 and the novel coronavirus. We live in an era where there's no shortage of information, and there's a few resources that I'd like to discuss, and I'll sort of start with our own, the Bennington County Regional Commission's website, or bcrcvt.org. If you have questions about COVID-19 responses or resources, please take some time to check out that website. It has been populated admirably by our emergency management planner, Allison Stroll, with assistance from BCRC Assistant Director, Bill Colvin. And there you can find resources for individuals, families, on the topic of food security, on public health, business and economic support services, and some interesting information for municipalities. I wanted to dwell on that municipalities element for a moment, because there's another resource that I'd like to make mention of that's coming to my mind in this interesting and uncertain time, and that is the Southern Vermont Economy Project, which is managed by the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation and its program manager, Sarah Lang. SVEP has been in existence for about 4 years now, a program out of BDCC's offices in Brattleboro, and it has a really interesting role to play at this point, where we see a focus from the federal resources that is currently and quite rightly supporting businesses, impact individuals and workers. SVEP is looking at municipal level issues, including the impacts from COVID-19 on municipalities, which are likely to be felt farther down the line and not as immediately as is affecting our businesses and affected individuals. This is a rather important asset because, as we know from other economic shocks, rural areas such as ours bounce back a little bit more slowly, and they feel the impacts a little bit after it is felt in larger urban areas. We've all seen the photographs of Fifth Avenue, empty as can be in New York City and Manhattan. But what we need to focus on, what we may want to focus a little more attention on, is what our main streets, our mill streets, our village streets are going to look like whenever it is that we emerge from under this cloud of COVID-19. If you are a municipal employee or you work in a town office, be on the lookout for a postcard from the Southern Vermont Economy Project, as they are putting together a series of webinars and informational gathers and informational details for municipalities, specifically for their finances and their community development responses to the impacts of COVID-19, which we believe will be felt most acutely for municipalities a few months after we get out of this cycle. And lastly, I'd like to just give a bit of a shout out to the local media coverage that we enjoy here in Southern Vermont, something that is quite remarkable. In this region of no more than 80,000 people, we enjoy 2 daily newspapers, the Bennington Banner, the Brattleboro Reformer, 2 weeklies, the Manchester Journal and the Deerfield Valley News, community periodicals such as the Vermont News Guide, other papers such as the Commons, and community television stations, GNAT-TV here in Sunderland, CAT-TV down in Bennington, BC-TV over in Brattleboro. These are experienced professional journalists and professionals who are bringing us news and information that is vetted, that we can trust, and helps complement what we find from our communities and municipal offices as they broadcast via social media platforms. This is an all-hands-on-deck scenario, and it's one in which we have a wealth of knowledge in our media sector and segment, and our hats go off to them. So that was top of mind for me, and I'm looking forward now to the conversational portion of our program. This one will have 2 guests, as I mentioned earlier. I'd like to welcome our first guest, Wendy Morse, who is the Southwestern Vermont Regional Manager with the Vermont Department of Labor. Wendy, we know it's been a record time. You heard that from Michael Harrington, but what are the biggest messages that you'd like to get out, and how are you sharing that information?
So there's really 2 messages that I'd like to get out. The first message is that we are still very much open for business. We're just providing all of our services virtually at this point. but our standard hours, this week we're actually open until 6 p.m., but our standard hours are 7:45 until this week, 6 p.m., Monday through Thursday, and Friday is 9:45 until 6 p.m. So we will continue to provide all of those same services that we would if you came into our office. We're just doing that virtually. You can start by calling our front desk, and locally in Bennington, that number is 442-6376. And Rutland is 786-5837. That's sort of one part of what we're doing. The other part of what we're doing is really responding to the unemployment need. We have had a record number of unemployment claims. Just to put some things into perspective, we had 27,000 claims between March 22nd to 28th that were filed. At the same time last year, it was 4,841 to date. And this is a little bit old, but we were, from March 15th, we're up to 63,000 claims that have been filed. What we're really doing is we're asking for a little patience from everybody. We know that the phones have certainly been very difficult and challenging to get through. We realize that we're working as hard as we possibly can to deal with the incredible volume that's coming through our call center and through our online portals. So we are asking for incredible patience from folks. If anybody, certainly has questions, they can call, and a lot of people have. They've been calling through our front desk, and we are limited with what we're able to help with, but we certainly can provide some assistance and guidance because the unemployment side of the house can be very, very confusing for people.
Sure, I understand. And so, and Wendy, I guess with that intense amount of interest and that surge, has your staff in the past sort of have they been staffed up or prepared to develop some skills to take on this new flood of inquiries?
Well, we're coming on. It's a great question. We're coming off from historically low unemployment. So, normally with these recessions, it's sort of, we can see it coming, and we keep adding staff as we see that coming. We didn't see this coming, so we don't have a significant amount of staff in our field offices and in our claims center right now. We have hired quite a few. A lot of folks that have been working specifically on unemployment have been folks that were already experienced working with unemployment. So we've been putting every available resource that we possibly can within the state to the unemployment system so that those claims are processed. They're processed as quickly as possible, and that people are gaining access to those benefits as quickly as possible. We are highly recommending that folks participate in virtual town meetings. We do have town meetings that are scheduled at various times. We are about to launch our second one today at 2 p.m., geared towards individuals who are self-employed. They may have questions about how to access unemployment benefits with that. And we have another session scheduled this Tuesday as well. The other thing that we're really encouraging people to do is to sign up for the unemployment newsletters. And all of that information you can get specifically on our website.
Right. Thank you, Wendy. This time I'd like to turn it over to our second guest, Peter Odierna, who directs marketing and government relations for K&E Plastics. Peter, before we jump into some of the recent activity, can we hear a little bit about your business for viewers who may not be familiar?
Sure. Thank you, Jonathan. As a first-time Zoomer, this is a learning experience for me, so I appreciate the opportunity this afternoon. K&E Plastics is a family-owned business that has over 50 years experience machining plastic and non-metallic parts. There are literally thousands of different types of plastics, and what we specialize in is machining glass-filled plastics. We're able to specialize in this market because in our 30,000 square foot facility, we have two 18,000 CFM dust collectors, and CFM stands for cubic feet per meter. So by having that critical infrastructure in place here at K&E Plastics, it allows us to take a leadership position in the machining of those glass-filled plastics. Right now, we have 25 employees, and Right now business is kind of a mixed bag. We do have a reasonable pace of activity on the factory floor. However, 2 months ago, we were planning for our best year ever. So, there's still some time to go here. I'm an optimist by nature. I'm hoping that, the combination of the warmer weather and, some of the work being done on therapeutics and vaccines will, shine that light at the end of the tunnel before too long, and we can get all back to normal.
That makes some sense. Yeah, I share your optimism. I think it's a necessary trait in this line of work. So Peter, since there's been a whole sort of wealth and plethora of programs that have been developed that have been brought to bear, I'm curious to know which programs from the SBA, from labor, from whichever sort of segments or corner have you been able to utilize at K&E Plastics, and how has that experience been?
Okay, so in the $2.2 trillion stimulus package to address the COVID-19 crisis, there were two big things coming out of the federal government. One is the Payroll Protection Program, or PPP as it's referred to, and the other one is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Now, here at K&E Plastics, we have applied for the Payroll Protection Program. We initially did it on Friday when it was supposed to roll out. We were then told that it was not ready for prime time, so we refiled yesterday. And then last night and this morning, we were hearing some issues that the SBA website might not have the critical wherewithal to process all these PPP applications. So quite frankly, we're prepared to file that again. We have no indication from the lender that we're working with that we have a loan number associated with our application. So it's a very fluid situation. We're learning more literally hour by hour. Like I said, if we have to reapply, we will.
And in conversations with some of your colleagues in and around Bennington or in the broader manufacturing base, are you seeing similar conversations, similar experiences?
Yes. Obviously, manufacturing is, sort of a bifurcated market nowadays. Some of us in these critical industries are operating close to full capacity. Some of our other manufacturers, automotive has basically been shut down. So, there's temporary weakness there. But the Payroll Protection Program is really a good program in the way it's been designed, because what it does is it provides a loan based on 2.5 times your monthly payroll. And if a company can retain their headcount through, the slowdown as we work through finding a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of dealing with this crisis and getting back to normal, so long as you maintain your payroll, that loan will be forgiven. So it's providing a direct incentive for companies who have been disrupted to some degree to maintain their payroll. I think it's well designed. The implementation, as you might expect with, thousands and thousands and thousands of companies applying from every square inch of the country, has presented some issues, but they'll be solved before too long.
That's great to hear. And Wendy, one question I have from the labor perspective is, with this suite of services that have been developed that Peter's referring to, sort of one of many, do you find that people are coming into your offices and sort of asking questions about a whole variety of these services, that some of which pertain directly to labor, some of which you're kind of having to learn on the fly as well to help provide a little bit of guidance?
Yeah, great question. And definitely, we're finding that we are becoming sort of a resource for a lot of different questions, some of which have nothing to do with us, and that's totally fine. We tend to be an agency, and we always have been, that's been very accessible. And, whether we're open, physically open, and, people can just come in our door and not need an appointment, we get those kinds of questions. And that's certainly true now, where, we're actually answering our phone and people are getting to real live human beings.
And that seems to be actually a relative strength of this sort of being in this small state. They say, small is beautiful. How can we capitalize on the value of Vermont's size? And I've been finding myself thinking that when we make phone calls, people answer. And that's quite different, in my estimation, from when we're down in Massachusetts or New York State. But Wendy, does that seem, have you heard people sort of responding in that way?
We've had people that have just thanked us for being able to pick up the phone and have been so grateful that they're able to connect to somebody, even if we can't necessarily help resolve their issue right then and there. Just being able to provide that guidance and refer them in the way that they need to be referred. They're incredibly grateful for that. And yeah, I don't think that happens everywhere.
And it sort of speaks, and I'd like to sort of toss us back to Peter for a moment, that I think that in these industries, in these sectors, these are people, these are colleagues, these are people that you've known for a long time. And much like there's some information that Wendy and the labor folks are able to provide to people coming through the door there, have you been able to provide any sort of insights or perspectives to other manufacturers and colleagues that maybe have similar questions?
There's certainly a lot more collaboration going on right now, especially looking at the supply chain for ventilators and other types of medical devices that can, help, get us through this crisis that we're dealing with. The folks up at the Burlington Makerspace have done an excellent job cataloging Vermont manufacturers on their manufacturing capabilities. So if in fact they want to pull together a consortium that can manufacture ventilators, that progress has already been put in place. But let me give you an example in terms of what we're seeing more in the day-to-day business here at K&E Plastics. Obviously, our aerospace business has been slow. It's been slow prior to the COVID-19 because of the issues related to Boeing and their 737 MAX. However, we were just approached by a gentleman from the Bennington Rescue Squad who asked us if we could fabricate an intubation box. And we said, yes, of course we can. And then he said, well, given the fact that this is going to be stored in an ambulance, we really don't have room to store that box as it's fabricated. Can you make a collapsible one for us? So we were able to get together actually yesterday and work with a number of our technicians who've been with K&E Plastics for a long time. And the long and short of it is we have developed this really cool design that will allow that intubation box to be collapsible, which will allow it to be stored more efficiently in ambulances. So it's really companies like K&E Plastics sort of stepping up to the plate, identifying that there's new needs in the community, leveraging the expertise that we have at K&E Plastics to provide real-world solutions.
That's remarkable. It was a Queen Elizabeth II sort of provided a speech, which is not the most common occurrence for her the other day, addressing the United Kingdom. And she had made some comment to the effect that she hopes that when this has passed, people will look back on what they did and how they did it and be proud. And it seems that what you're describing is something that I think is a great example of what the manufacturing sector can take pride in, and that's a story that I think can be told. As I know, once we're out of this trough, we're back to what Wendy described as, historically low unemployment, and it will be really interesting to see how these narratives are able to shape people's perceptions of places to work, places to make a difference, and places to have a career.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So with that, I think we have maybe just time for one or two more questions. And so, Wendy, can I ask, what have you seen for the attendance for the virtual town halls to date? And sort of, has it been something I noticed attending the first one was that some people came with questions in mind. There's a chat function, they could type in what they wanted to know. And I thought that people that came with a specific question in mind seem to have a pretty high success rate at getting that question directly answered. Do you expect that there's going to be an upswell in logging in and signups? I think it was around 600 and something for that first one.
That's a great question, Jonathan. And yes, we are expecting that our virtual town halls are going to expand in popularity. I think we had, actually it was around 800 was the last number. The really great thing about them is that people can relink to them directly from our website in the right-hand corner, and they're also broadcast on YouTube too. So you can get on to YouTube and you can rewatch them or you can send a link to others. You know, and if I can just reverse a little bit, you said something that Queen Elizabeth said about, you know, we're going to be really proud about all of this stuff. And we talk about that all the time in labor. It's amazing how we've embraced this technology in a very different way. I mean, these virtual town halls is something that we've been able to roll out very quickly. All of the changes to our unemployment system, our online claimant portal, that is something that we were able to roll out very quickly in a matter of a couple of days. So it's remarkable the amount of, you know, creativity that's happened. And I loved hearing K&E's story about the collaboration with EMT. I mean, that's phenomenal. We're going to come out of this very, very different and far more creative, and probably have more tools and resources available to us that we didn't have before.
You know, if it's an opportunity for us to demonstrate how rural can be flexible, then yeah, I think it's definitely been our time to shine. So thank you. Advanced thanks to Mark Moffat, who is going to do a spectacular job with the editing from my somewhat weak connection and spotty here and there. But I'd like to take a moment to thank Wendy Morse from the Vermont Department of Labor, Peter Odierna of K&E Plastics. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for tuning in to listen to some of these emerging details around COVID-19 and how manufacturers and the private sector and the public sector are uniting to respond in kind. Vermont strong, as we would always expect. So thank you very much, everyone. Peter, Wendy, thanks again.
Thank you.